football and the F words. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at FWordsPod. He's Mike Herndon. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Herndon NFL. We are sponsored by Bluegrass Beverages. Come to find out, they don't have something called the in crowd. It's like the Bob. So you need to join both the in crowd for Sinkers Beverages and the Bob for Bluegrass Beverages to make sure that you are on the list for both with their exclusive offerings and fantastic deals and possibly a little bit of, I guess you could say, a little bit of upcoming sweepstakes as well. So you need to make sure that you are all signed up for all of those. Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville. I've been around since the 70s, longer than me and Mike. Parkarski.com is where you can find Mike's written work. You can find my written work at stackingtheinbox.com. You could buy both, subscriptions to both, if I'm not mistaken, for just at $10. Is he still $5.99 or something like that?
Yeah, $5.99, I believe.
There you go. So, like, just right at $10, you can get both of our all the daily content you could want. Lots and lots of articles, film analysis, all kinds of detailed analysis, facts and opinions, all that stuff that you crave from your Titans written websites. Unless you are a weirdo and you just want, the same old articles that you can get at both, Titans Wire, Titans Size, the copy pasta articles that everybody writes that has really no substance to them. We bring you substance, no empty calories at podkarski.com and stackingtheinbox.com. It's the dead period, which we can kind of talk about why it's technically not the dead period a little too. So, but we got a kind of like I call it a potpourri, like on Jeopardy, a potpourri of topics, Titans topics ahead for you guys today.
I do like the potpourri category.
Yeah,
always.
Potpourri is always great. I feel like it's a lost item in households. I don't think people really have do you even have potpourri in your bathroom?
No.
We have poopery, the little spray, that you're supposed to spray in the toilet. It's not after you flush. You're supposed to spray it as you flush. So you got to make sure that you get your poopery right. It's
interesting.
Yeah,
no, we do have like the Febreze Air stuff, but no.
I guess that's replaced everything now. No more. I guess too many kids were eating actual potpourri because obviously they'll eat.
Kids will eat
anything. Well, I mean, you got teenagers eating Tide Pods and all that kind of stuff to really date ourselves. All that kind of stuff. Okay, let's talk about the dead period because I think everybody is kind of under the impression at this point that nothing happens in the dead period. Which technically, yes, even though that we will likely have a DeAndre Hopkins decision during all this, maybe you'll see like a trade or something, but it's not really a dead period for the players. And I think that is a big distinction that we need to make on this show is that every player, especially the rookies, especially people like Malik Willis, like Will Levis, these young players like Jalen Duncan and undrafted free agents are all kind of sent home with homework, right? These are merely suggestions, but they are like hardcore suggestions for a player. And if you follow this to a T, these suggestions, this homework, you should be prepared for training camp. Now, this obviously is in conjunction with, staying healthy, staying in shape, which is also probably given to many people. Here's a plan. Here's a diet plan, blah, blah, blah. Because you don't get any interaction inside the building through this. So don't you agree that maybe dead period gives off this wrong vibe? Because not everybody's in the media, right?
Yeah, there's from a news standpoint, it's dead. But I mean, Mike Vrabel said it before they wrapped OTAs that the next 6 weeks are the most important 6 weeks of the season, in his view, that guys going and taking care of themselves, not getting in trouble, not going and partying for 6 weeks in Ibiza or whatever, continuing to work out, continuing to do what the coaches have asked them to do to be prepared, to be ready to go when training camp opens is critical. And I do think that's something that there's a lot of stuff that kind of gets lost, I feel like, because it's the transactions are easier to talk about. The coaching, hiring, and firing is easier to talk about. But a lot of the stuff, I think, a lot of the secret sauce of the NFL is really how well are coaches organized as far as getting their players, better from year to year, improving their players, giving them tools to get better. And then how mature is your roster as far as the leadership, as far as the players that are, from top to bottom? How much are they focused on being the best that they can be versus how much are they happy to be in the NFL and excited to, be able to wear the team gear and collect the paycheck and, tell girls that they're football players, So I think there's there's wide spectrum on that, like what different teams are like. And I think that's what, in a word, that boils down to culture, I think is what that ultimately gets boiled down to from a talking point standpoint. But I think there's a lot that goes into that. And I think it's super important to how teams operate.
Yeah, isn't this dead period? Isn't this really where Isaiah Wilson went just insane? Like,
Uh,
this was that period of time. So, like, it's crucial to stay in for a player to stay engaged, right? Like, I'm sure that Traylon Burks is not just going to be sitting on his ass eating beef jerky and killing pigs. I'm sure he's actually working to make sure that he maintains and carries momentum into training camp that he has started with, like you learn. So obviously Traylon Burks, who just went through that, should be able to impart that wisdom to this rookie class. Like, you got to learn from me. You have to stay engaged. You have to stay in shape. This is a critical moment for your growth as a football player. And it's a good way to show the team that you are committed. Like, I think of a guy like Jalen Duncan, who comes from a program in Maryland that we have both talked about that didn't really, it's kind of like they just throw football players out there. Like, okay, you're a football player. We're just going to throw you out there, learn on the fly. And he's a guy that's probably a little bit behind on technique, a little bit behind on strength and staying in shape and all that kind of stuff. And this is a good time for him to show and prove maybe some doubters wrong that he is just a 6th-round throwaway pick. And, you think of Will Levis, who we'll talk about a little bit more in depth between him and Malik Willis. But Will Levis, a guy that's been coined that doesn't make the same mistake twice. Does he improve upon that, make a jump, and, not make the same mistakes twice, right? Like, if he comes back and keeps making the same mistakes he was making in OTAs and minicamp, then he is the guy that makes the same mistakes twice. And that's not a good sign, because I talk about it on Thursday. I talk about, was choosing the glow up the right move, and what happens if it fails and what happens if it succeeds. And contrary to popular belief among the fan base, these coaches also coach during the regular season, and they do practice during the regular season when there's not eyes on them in the media, right? There's like team meetings, there's film meetings, there's taking what you're told in the meeting room and bringing it out to practice. Like there is that stuff.
The media reports on the tip of the iceberg, literally. And it's not the media's fault, because they are not allowed access to, and they are not even allowed to talk about big chunks of practice or certain things in practice. Like, the reason you don't get like, well, this was the first team offensive line this week, is there are media rules. And if you do not follow those rules, they will pull your credential and not let you back in the building. So the media literally reports on the tip of the iceberg, and they can only video, like, to give you a little behind the scenes, like, you're only allowed to video like maybe 1 to 2 periods of practice per day when you're out there. So that's why you don't get a ton of video of all the other stuff. You get like little bitty bits of individual drills. Occasionally they'll let you do one-on-ones during training camp, but that's it. That's all you get to video. So, like you said, there's more practices, there's more meeting rooms, there's more film review, there's more lifting and everything else that goes into it. The players are literally there like 8 hours a day plus, especially during training camp. I mean, during training camp, it's probably longer hours than that. But the media is only there for maybe 2 hours. The 2 hour practice session and they're only able to report on certain things, and they're only able to film like maybe 10 minutes of it. So there's a ton that happens and a ton of things going on that the media doesn't even know about, and some that they can't tell you about. So there's a lot that happens that,
But they can get a good sense of Will Levis's progression throughout the
yeah,
year without him playing in a game. And so, like, to me, it almost is like there needs to be some level of team success in 2023 for this glow up to be considered a success. But a lot of it hinges on Will Levis's growth, and this is a critical moment. These 5 weeks, I believe it is a critical moment for Will Levis's growth to show that he can be the guy that they want him to be, right? Like, they want him to be the guy and all that kind of stuff. But let's move away from this topic because we're going to kind of dive back into this topic a little bit later. I'm a little. We've kind of touched on it throughout the course of this past season and on this off season, but the run pass ratio thing is being hung around the neck of Mike Vrabel. There's his philosophy, his thing, and while I do agree that is how most defensive minded head coach want to play the game. They want to have an efficient run game with a mistake-free passing game and a really good defense. And why some people think that may not be a recipe for success, but we have talked about that is exactly like San Francisco's model is essentially they have a really great defense, right? I mean, like it's not really often talked about how great the defense is for San Francisco. They've had really good coordinators, really good players. They have found players. 2 of those players are now on the Tennessee Titans team. I mean, it's a really good defense, and they run the ball a lot. And so today, it was about first and second that how can Tannehill prove that he is good in the playoffs if they run on first and second down so much, which doesn't really make sense to me because it's like then you got to make it count when you are asked to pass, and he has not done that his last 2 playoff appearances. So
I will say this
yeah.
towards that though. Passing on third down is a much harder proposition than passing on first and second down because the defense knows it's coming. They know where the first down marker is. It's much more difficult to throw the football. In passing stats uniformly are depressed on third downs relative to first and second down passing, which is why so many people want to see more passes on first and second down, and why Tannehill, when he is just asked to bail him out of third and long situations after 2 failed runs, is being set up for failure to some degree.
And
although I do agree with your point that
I do want them to pass more, by the way. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I do want them to pass more first down, be less predictable. But I kind of wanted to throw this out there because, Will Lomas is also one of the guys. He's the guy that kind of sparked this conversation. And then he's also the guy who said they should have fired Vrabel and promoted Art Smith and all this stuff. So, like, he hates Vrabel. He could say he doesn't hate Vrabel, but we all see the tweets, right? Like, I mean,
not a Vrabel fan.
It could be a tweet about Golden State Warriors, and he's going to somehow turn it into a Mike Vrabel tweet. Like, I'm sure this submarine is somehow Mike Vrabel's fault. Absolutely. That's all fine and good. There's people on both ends of the spectrum, right? There's people that just defend Mike Vrabel blindly, and there's people that say Ryan Tannehill is the worst quarterback ever in the history of the Tennessee Titans. Like there's extremists on all sides on all topics. But let's bring some substance to it. Over the last 2 seasons, so Todd Downing's full 2 seasons in 2021 and 2022, they averaged on first and second down just 1 more rushing play per game than the San Francisco 49ers. Just think about that. That's just 1 less. To me, the issue has been for the Tennessee Titans isn't that they're calling a run play or isn't that they're calling a pass play in certain situations. To me, it's that they just haven't been efficient because the play design or the personnel that they have had the last 2 seasons. Like, we saw it work with Arthur Smith, right? I
Right.
mean, like, if you look at it, and during Arthur Smith's tenure, they ran the ball an average of 28.1 plays per game. 28.1 plays per game they ran the ball. Under Todd Downing in 2021 and 2022, they averaged 27.6. So a little bit less. Not by much, but a little bit less. The difference is that they passed more because they had more plays. So per game, they passed more because they had more plays because they were efficient. But they also scored a lot. And that is the problem because the play design by Art Smith is so much better than the play design of Todd Downing. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, I mean, and that is ultimately the thing. It is still effectively the same offense that they've run for the past 6 years now. Here, the difference has been that when you put better players in it, it's more effective. And when you have a better coach and a better play caller, it's more effective. So it's not, I don't think it's necessarily that this style of football does not work. I mean, they had the 4th best offense in the entire NFL in 2020, and they ran the hell out of the ball, right? So I don't think it's that this is a doomed to fail scheme or that, running the ball can't be effective in the NFL. I don't think that's true at all. I just think, and to the Vrabel part of that, I do agree that he has probably dictated to some degree that, hey, we are going to run the football. But I think it's not because Vrabel is some, like, at least in my opinion. Now, there's no evidence either way on this, right? Because we've only seen it basically one way. Is that Mike Vrabel has looked at this roster ever since he's been here and said, look, team is built to run the ball. The roster that I have is built to run the ball. In 2018, when he got there, they had Corey Davis, but they didn't have A.J. Brown yet. So they didn't have good receivers. They had Marcus Mariota. Yeah, they had Marcus Mariota throwing the football. And by the way, Marcus Mariota gets hurt immediately in that season and can't throw. Delaney Walker gets hurt immediately in that season, and he's their best pass catcher. And so they ran the ball a lot. And then Derrick Henry emerges at the end of, I guess it was the end of 2018. And then he's their best player from then on. And they built the offense around Henry and the offensive line, which at that time was pretty good. And that's always made sense. So I think we're now at a point where, if you look at the way that the offensive line is built, if you look at Henry's age and effectiveness, and if you look at, I guess the team around or the roster around Vrabel, that it is less clear that this is supposed to be a running team. And I'm very interested to see if that shifts now. That is Vrabel just trying to build the best offense that he can with the pieces and parts available to him? Or is this I believe this is the way it has to be done. We're going to hit this number of runs every game, no matter what. And this is the way it's always going to be. Because I don't think Vrabel is an idiot. I just don't. I think he's a very intelligent guy. Maybe a little stubborn, or maybe a little hard-headed at times. But I think he's smart enough to understand where the league is and where it's going, and also understand what his team is. Because if you ask Ryan Tannehill to drop back 45 times a game and play like Patrick Mahomes, guess what? It's not going to go like that. It's not going to be like the Chiefs just because he threw it a whole bunch. I think maybe if Will Levis turns out to be this, franchise quarterback that they've been looking for, I think they're going to give him the opportunity to throw the ball around the yard and make plays and put the ball in his hands and be a quarterback passing game driven team. I think that will happen. I just don't think it's going to happen until it's clear that that is the best way to win, because that ultimately is what Vrabel cares about.
Ultimately, isn't like, I guess we've always talked about this particular team, and I do think that it is somewhat of an issue that it's the run and pass game are very symbiotic. Now, a lot of offenses are like that, but this specific team, like, that is how it's kind of worked. But because Derrick Henry was so successful, that allowed other players in the passing game to be successful. And when he's less successful, that means that other players on this team are less successful. And what that shows you is that Derrick Henry has clearly been arguably the best player on every version of the Mike Vrabel Titans. And you want to give the best player the ball. AJ Brown, even when he was here, you can make an argument for AJ Brown, and I probably wouldn't push back too hard. But Derrick Henry went for 2,000 yards while AJ Brown was here, right? Like, we got to remember that Derrick Henry done a lot. You can win with AJ Brown, right? I mean, you can, if he's the focal point of your offense, which your number one wide receiver should be your focal point, you should find ways to get him the ball too. But it's not like Derrick Henry is some slouch. And at this point, when you're looking at the team last year, who else are you going to give the ball to? Robert Woods, and who couldn't move? Yeah, Austin Hooper. I mean, like, these guys, these aren't good players. Like, I don't understand why it's so far-fetched to think that, okay, well, Derrick Henry's the best player. The best chance that we have to move the ball with this offensive line's pass protection and Robert Woods as our number one wide receiver, because Traylon Burks couldn't stay healthy and Kyle Phillips got injured, and they refused to use Chigakonkwo in any kind of way for like the first 8 or 9 weeks. That was the way. That was the way that they could win. And we know that based on comments by Mike Vrabel, he gives his coordinators a little too much leeway to decide who is the best players to field at any given point. It's a lot easier on the defense because Shane Bowen and Jim Schwartz could be trusted. But Keith Carter and Todd Downing cannot be trusted, and he gave them a little too much leeway. And maybe that is an issue that he's hoping to correct, or maybe he trusts Tim Kelly to do the job correctly and all this stuff. But I don't know. It's like, I don't feel it's a Mike Vrabel thing as much as it was this is the only way I could devise for us to win. And maybe that is a Mike Vrabel thing. Maybe people are going to take that phrase and think, well, if this is the only way he thinks he can win, then he's an idiot and he needs to figure out more stuff. But I would guarantee you, almost any coach would come in, excuse me, offensive or defensive minded and say, Derrick Henry is clearly the best player on this team in 2022. Ryan Tannehill is a distant second, and we have to set up Ryan Tannehill for success through Derrick Henry. And unfortunately, the offensive line did not allow that. I mean, that's kind of where I feel like it's at. Like, to me, it's like Todd Downing, offensive line, like 1A, 1B, then it's everybody else like a distant third.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think it's I think that is what makes this season very interesting to me, because everything we've heard all the discussion about Tim Kelly changing the terminology, them going faster, more tempo, that kind of thing. I'm super interested to hear, or not to hear, to see what this offense actually looks like and how it changes in a team where, I'm not saying Traylon Burks is better than Derrick Henry right now, but he might be. Like, he might be, by the time the season gets started, he might be your best weapon on offense. And, if they sign DeAndre Hopkins, I think you could certainly make a case that he would be your best weapon day one. So I'm very interested to see how this thing evolves. And it's look, we've talked about it all offseason. You were on this immediately, that it's a pass blocking offensive line that they've built. These guys are all pass blockers first before they're maulers in the run game. So I think it's going to be with the exception of maybe Brewer, but I think it's going to be very interesting to see how all of this falls out. And I think we'll get a lot of answers about what Vrabel is and what, Todd Kelly, or not Todd Kelly, Todd Downing versus Tim Kelly, what that difference actually looks like. So I think it's going to be a super interesting season from that.
Do I think they're going to come out first and second down every series and throw, bombs all the time. No, they're still going to be a team that wants to build off the run game, build off play action, and use similar looking sets a variety of ways. I mean, that's what we know that they want to do. They have pretty much. Oh man, I just like my light just like took down a wall
Oh shit.
over here, like scratched it and everything. Shit.
Uh,
But anyway, it scared the shit out of Huxley. He's all like, "What the fuck just happened?" Uh, anyway, as I adjust my lights here on the end of the computer, I just feel like it's just gonna look different. It may not like probably for the first few weeks, it's probably not gonna feel different, right? Like you're gonna kind of look at it and think, well, this is just the same old offense. But eventually, as it goes on and gets into a groove, you're gonna notice that there are little minor things besides just the speed of which they play that makes this a little bit more successful. Like I don't think it's ever going to be like 2020, 2019 good, but I think this year has a real chance to be way better than anything Downing fielded. And that is a credit to Mike Vrabel for picking out this offensive staff. Like if you're going to say that he's an idiot for hiring Todd Downing, and if Tim Kelly comes in and is super successful, then he's a genius for hiring Coach Haas, for hiring Charles London, for hiring Joseph Otten, all these guys that, we kind of were like, just, yeah, they're okay. He's got to be the genius for that. You can't go around and say, well, that must have been Amy Adams Strunk, or you can't do it.
no,
Like
that's going back to the whole Tim Kelly was doing the good plays and Todd Downing was doing the bad plays last year thing. Like
he was only forced to do it, right?
Yeah,
that's what they're gonna say. You mentioned DeAndre Hopkins, and there's still stuff coming out here and there. He said that he can help any wide receiver room or whatever be better, which duh. Thanks for that tweet. We really needed it. But Mike Girardi put out this tweet, and there's a few elements I just kind of want to hit on real quick, but I also want to tie this into two other wide receivers. So he says, circled back on the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes with the question mark in there for whatever reason. Source with knowledge of the situation hammered home there is no rush to make a decision, that there could be more out there in the coming weeks / start of training camp, citing possibly a team unhappy with their wide receiver room or an injury. Source added that Hopkins liked his meeting with the Patriots, but has also had similar feelings about his trip to Nashville to sit with Vrabel and the Titans. They each offer something unique to Hopkins. Both teams told Hopkins he still has elite capabilities. So I like that the team, and maybe they don't have to say it, but maybe they just say it anyway. No team had to really say that he has elite capabilities, right? Unless he like flat out asks, "Do you think I'm still elite?" Like, which would be a very weird thing to put. But using the word elite, I think, is a good sign that the Titans know that DeAndre Hopkins is capable to perform at a level that they deem elite on this team. And I think each offering something unique is true too. I kind of don't believe, because we don't know what the source close to the situation says or who that is, right?
Yeah.
I think it's an agent, because I don't think there is going to be a third team between now and training camp unless there is some freak jet ski 4th of July boating accident to a wide receiver, because you already know if you are unhappy with your wide receiver room after mini camp, right? Like, there's nothing going to change between mini camp and training camp unless it's going to carry on into training camp, which would be horrendous for everybody involved in the media that we have to do that go into training camp. So I feel like this is a false narrative being thrown out there that they think that a third team's going to suddenly emerge because the wide receiver room is unhappy.
I would say I don't know that a third team is suddenly going to emerge. I think it's kind of the fact that there wasn't a third visit, already lined up after the Patriots one, to me is pretty telling that like those are the teams whose offers, or who at least have when they've talked money, have been in a close enough ballpark that it made sense for him to make a trip out there and sit down and talk to them and kind of sort through the how are you going to use me, meet and greet, all the that kind of thing. I think that's pretty interesting. But as far as a third team, the only way is like, yeah, if there's an injury, maybe. The Chiefs still, I guess, if they got a Chris Jones extension done that helped their cap situation, and maybe, they wanted to try to make something work. Maybe if they aren't super blown away with what Rashee Rice has done at OTAs, I could see maybe they get involved at some point, because they were reportedly interested in a trade until the money that Hopkins was wanting in a rework deal ended up not being feasible for them. And they gave the money that they had earmarked for Hopkins to was it Donovan Smith, the left tackle. So I imagine they're still out.
Yeah, it's hard for me to get behind the Chiefs signing a guy to a 1-year deal. That's not really how they've really operated,
They did
but
it with Juju last year.
yeah, but I mean, like, Juju didn't really do much, right? And to me, it's almost like this team showed last year that they don't need to spend big money on a wide receiver. They are the quintessential, they're one of the few teams that don't have to, I feel like, but they don't have to spend big money on a wide receiver like DeAndre Hopkins. But it comes down to then, does DeAndre Hopkins change his mind and take a lesser deal to play with someone like Patrick Mahomes to get a Super Bowl and get in the Hall of Fame? Like, what's more important for I personally think that DeAndre Hopkins is way more concerned about money than a Super Bowl ring or Hall of Fame. But that does not mean that a football player could change his mind on a dime with the right situation and say, okay, the only thing I need to really cement Hall of Fame status is a Super Bowl ring. And I think that DeAndre Hopkins could then change his mind, but I just don't see the Chiefs being the team that enters into the fray. I really don't see any team entering in the fray, barring, like I said, one of their players decides to go down in a submarine to check out the Titanic and get stuck down there. Like, I just don't see anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. To me, the
You know what
Chiefs
that means? That
still
means that
don't
someone's going to suddenly show up and sign them. Like, it's just going to be announced.
And maybe. I mean, yeah, there's just not a whole lot of other teams that make a ton of sense out there that are both like fringe contenders or contenders, and also have a big time need at a wide receiver spot that they want to plug with a short term option. And look, the Titans and Patriots, it both makes sense to some degree, because I guess from the Patriots standpoint, their wide receivers are terrible. They've got Juju and basically nothing else. And they're wanting to see what they've got in Mac Jones, I think, as much as anything. That they feel like if Mac, to figure out what they have in Mac Jones, they need to give him adequate weapons to work with. And that the Titans, it makes sense because their wide receiver room is terrible. And they want to compete this year for the AFC South. And I don't think, I've been hesitant about them being, whether they were going to be in the mode of trying to compete, or if they were just kind of happy to take this as like a sideways step year. And I think they're kind of trying to do both. I think they're trying to take it as a sideways year from a standpoint of like, they didn't go commit a ton of money to future players, like as far as like big free agent deals. They didn't restructure a ton of guys and add dead cap hits to future years. Now, if they went to go get Hopkins, they would have to do some of that, but it'd still be like almost nothing in the grand scheme of things, compared to what they've done the past few years on the restructure side and things like that. So I feel like they're trying to kind of shoot that middle where it's like, we can reset our cap for the most part. We'll maybe do this Hopkins thing and borrow a little bit of money from next year, but for the most part, we're going to reset the cap. We're going to have a ton of cap space to work with, whether we do the Hopkins deal or not next offseason. But hey, we could still compete for the division this year, and then just get in the tournament, as John Robinson used to call it, and see what happens from there.
Because the Patriots are way far away from being contenders in their own division. I mean,
Their
they are
division is brutal. Yeah,
clearly the fourth place team, and
I
even
think so.
with Hopkins, are clearly the fourth place team. Like,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous how, and maybe DeAndre Hopkins and a Bill Belichick marriage somehow turns Mac Jones into something that he's not, and
And
turns
Mac Jones
this,
was pretty good as a rookie, right? I mean, he
yeah,
was pretty good.
hasn't been good since then.
No, he was terrible last year with the defensive coordinator calling plays and all the other mess that was going on in New England last year. But
But
I
isn't
think
the easier path to success and getting paid the Tennessee Titans, right? I think we both
yes,
agree on that.
yes, definitely. The Titans can make that money appear easier than the Patriots can make the money appear easier than the Titans can, but the Titans can make it appear almost easier than anyone else. And you have automatic, you step in, your wide receiver one, and you have an opportunity to go win the division. I mean, I think that's a pretty good setup for Hopkins, and you're with a coordinator that you're familiar with, that you've had good years under. You're not going to have to learn a brand new offense, brand new terminology from scratch. There's so many benefits for Hopkins, to me, being here in Nashville, that I think it makes sense at the end of the day. We'll see. The Bill Belichick, he does seem enamored with Bill Belichick for whatever reason, but which, I mean, I get it. He's the greatest coach of all time, but I don't know that outweighs everything else that the Titans can offer.
Mike, would you rather have DeAndre Hopkins or trade for Stephon Diggs or T. Higgins? Now, this Stephon Diggs thing, I think, is getting way blown out of proportion. I don't believe that he's on the trading block. I don't believe that there's anything wrong in the Bills locker room or anything like that. But hypothetically, both are available, and then you still have DeAndre Hopkins. Are you still signing DeAndre Hopkins because of the situation your trades have put you in 2024? Or are you going for the big splash and saying, hey, look, Stephon Diggs did wonder for Josh Allen. He could do wonders for Will Levis in 2024. We're going to trade for T. Higgins and extend him. And him and Treylon Burks are going to go off in 2024 and beyond with Will Levis at the helm. Like, where are you at mentally? Because I know that if I propose this, you'd be like, I think you would do T. Higgins, Stephon Diggs, then DeAndre Hopkins, while DeAndre Hopkins was with the Cardinals. I think DeAndre Hopkins, I would guess, that would be your third option out of the three. But now that he's a free agent, does that change your mind? Would you rather have like how do you feel about all those guys?
So I guess my first choice, I would like to have Higgins, because he's young, in his prime, proven wide receiver one. You're going to have good years out of him over the next several years. Now, to me, I don't know that Higgins makes a ton of sense for the Titans specifically, just because I think there's a lot of overlap with him and Burks from a skill set standpoint. And I don't know that you need another ball winner, vertical guy when you've got Burks on the roster already.
Can you have enough of those players?
I mean, maybe you could say all right, well, we're just going to go full twin towers here on the outside, and we're just going to throw up go balls to Burks and Higgins all afternoon and see if you can stop it, which isn't a bad strategy. I'd sign up to watch that for sure. But Higgins would be my favorite of all those choices. Hopkins by far is my second choice. I don't want anything to do with trading for Diggs, because the price is going to be outrageous. You're going to have to give up, I'm sure, a first round pick to get him. And his contract is large. And frankly, I don't even know if the Bills can afford to trade him.
I don't think they can.
Which is why I think this all ends up being moot anyways, is the fact that the Bills can't afford to trade him because of the dead cap hit they would have to take on. And they're already in a terrible cap situation. So I don't think he's going to get traded, but you would have to take on a big contract. He's 29 years old. I think he'll turn 30 this season. So it's not like he's that much younger than Hopkins. He's a year and a half, 2 years younger than Hopkins. That to me, if I can have Hopkins for half the price cap space wise and no draft capital whatsoever, because the other thing is the Titans don't have any draft capital next year to work with, which is still a little bit of a problem hanging out there for them. But if you were to trade for Diggs, you'd have like no picks next year at all. So to me, Higgins and Hopkins, to me, like it's almost like Higgins Hopkins is really close for me, because I think Hopkins, the fact that he's free from a draft capital standpoint and the cheapest out of the three of them from a financial commitment standpoint, is very attractive to me.
Yeah, I think I'd be there with you on that. Just wanted a little quick Hopkins update. We got a lot I still want to get to, so let's go. Let's switch gears. We're going to move off the Titans for just a little bit, and I want to talk about your boy or your boys in orange. Okay, I want to talk about your boys in orange, and I want to talk about this fan base that is in orange.
Which one? Which one?
The University of Tennessee.
Okay.
This golden era of sports, so the golden era of University of Tennessee, is so lame. Like, okay, so out of all of these little accolades that everybody wants to put out and all of that, congratulations, you beat Clemson in the Cherubundi Tart Cherry Boca Raton Bowl or whatever bowl game that you guys played in. That doesn't fucking matter. You beat Clemson. So you got one little trophy, I guess you could put in your trophy case. But other than that, you just got a bunch of participation awards. You guys are basically acting, your University of Tennessee, because you're inner home divided between University of Tennessee and University of Texas, Mike. But so your University of Tennessee side is all about participation awards, just like the Colts hanging banners up in their rafters. It's shameful. It's ridiculous. You guys, if you're in the golden era, you have to have golden medals in the trophy case. Like, you guys are like not even bronze. I mean, do you guys even have a third place trophy for anything?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing to me. Like, I think all of it's a little bit silly. The whole like, oh, this is a golden area of UT sport. And look, they've been good in a lot of sports, right? Like, they've been good in basketball recently. They've been good in baseball recently. They, have had at least one good year of football.
Wait, don't y'all want to fire the basketball coach? Like, isn't everybody kind of sick of the basketball coach?
I think
golden era, though.
Look, I have a special perspective on Rick Barnes because as a Texas alum and Tennessee fan, I wanted Barnes out of Texas for the exact same reasons that Tennessee fans want him out of Tennessee right now. He is a good coach. He's going to recruit you 5-star players. He is going to win during the regular season. You're going to be ranked. You're going to be in the tournament every year. But ultimately, those 5-star players are not going to be maximized. They're not going to turn into the superstars that, like you see a Brandon Miller or, these other guys that come in and put up crazy numbers in college. Barnes just cannot develop these guys from an offensive standpoint. And two, you're going to lose in the postseason before you should. It happened almost every year in Texas, and it was why they wanted him gone. And they ultimately hired Shaka Smart, which was a failure. And we'll see what happens with Rodney Terry now. But I think nobody at Texas wants Barnes back. All right, they're happy they moved on from him because they raised the ceiling, in their opinion, of what the program can be. So yeah, I think Barnes. He's okay. He's fine. But I think this is what Tennessee's going to be. They're going to be like maybe a Sweet 16 team every other year. But that's it. Like, they're not going to go to Final Fours or win championships.
Golden era. That sounds great. Golden era.
And look, here's the other thing for Tennessee. There is a metric that actually measures at the whole, because you want to make this like the holistic thing of like all the sports at the school and everything. There is actually a cup called the Director's Cup that measures all of the colleges and how they perform across all sports. And they take like your whatever it is. I think it's like 19 best finishing teams And Stanford had won it like 25 years in a row, just because Stanford competes in like every sport. But Texas won it the last 2 years. But look, Texas
Yeah, I'm
and
looking at it right
Stanford.
now. Tennessee, I don't see them for the 21-22 season. Maybe it'll be this year, though.
I mean, I think Tennessee's probably in the top like 15, top 10, maybe. But you're not like, it's not like that this is a totally unique thing that like, oh my gosh, this is the best athletic department ever. It's just, it's great. Like, it's great that you're good at all these sports, but win a championship or something. Like, win something that matters. Because I mean, have they
One
even
good
won?
year of football does not mean you're in the golden era of football,
Right.
because
Yeah.
you could really fall off this year with a much harder schedule, with a guy in Joe Milton that is what, this is like his 10th year playing. He's like the Hunter Renfro of
Yeah.
quarterbacks or something. And just because he has a big arm doesn't mean he knows how to use it. There's so many variables for this Tennessee football team, and so many, like, I just don't get it. I just don't know how, without some kind of championship, you could seriously sit there with a straight face, put out a tweet of all these accomplishments that just mean you've lost a lot. Like, you just lost all those. You didn't win anything.
It's kind of the like, hey, we were above average and everything. Like I just don't. I think it's great for the school. Like, and I think it's good for Tennessee that like they are actually relevant in all these
Yeah, it's
sports
good
right
for
now, because
sports. Yeah.
the baseball program was terrible for forever, until Vitello got there and turned it around. The basketball program has been up and down, but the basketball program has had higher peaks than what they've had under Barnes. To me, like, I mean, the Bruce Pearl peak was higher than the Rick Barnes peak has been. Even some of the teams back further than that had some good runs as well. So like the Ron Slay years and things like that. So I don't know that it's exceptional, and the football team isn't better than what they were 20 years ago. Right now. So I just think I in the ladies basketball and all that, like, obviously the ladies basketball team is nowhere near what it used to be. So I don't know that I even agree that it's the golden era of Tennessee sports right now. I think they're very good, but I don't think this is the best era of Tennessee sports in my lifetime. I mean, I'd have to go back and look at specific years, I guess, to see if maybe this was the best individual school year. But to me, an era is multiple years. Like, it's over like a 5-year span at least. And I don't know that I would consider this a golden era of UT sports.
Ridiculous. What people will say when on the radio, if their alma mater or hometown fan is this Orange School in national radio. Okay, this submarine thing, because I do have one more Titans topic after we talk about this submarine thing. This submarine thing is the most ridiculous thing I have seen. So we are on our way back we're in the Detroit airport waiting to eating a Leo's Coney hot dog. Scarfed down 2 of those motherfuckers right before like 10:30 a.m. So it's like breakfast of champions, 2 hot dogs.
Great start to the day.
Airport hot dogs. And so we're sitting there, and I look up at the TV, and it's actually on Sky News, and it's actually the British Parliament are arguing about something or whatever. But at the bottom, and this is Monday, it says, commercial submarine has lost communication. We don't know where it's at. It's lost at sea, looking for the Titanic. Okay, so that was a little weird, because why are people still wanting to go down and see the Titanic at this point? But it says commercial thing, so I'm thinking like maybe a research or what. And then it goes from submarine. While I'm sitting there, right before we leave, it put up submersible instead of submarine. So totally changed everything, but I didn't really think anything of it. Yeah. And then yesterday morning, you get to see what these idiots, these people with way too much money, built, thinking that they know better than other people. This thing was literally, if you have not seen the video, because the news reporter,
unbelievable.
I don't
Drop
know who
whatever
the news
you're
reporter
doing
is.
to find it. Yeah.
You got to go, because the news reporter just is fucking laughing in their face, right? Like, He's like, you got to be kidding me. When he shows him the controls and that's controlled by like a Bluetooth or Wi-Fi enable, which is not going to work at some point underwater, right? That Bluetooth technology cannot work, I would assume, based on how they built it. A Mad Catz controller, like a Lexipro, I think it was Lexipro or something as well, or Lenoprovo or something.
Yeah.
But it reminded me of a Mad Catz like GameCube controller that they took down, and that's what they're going to steer with. But then they show other shots, like right after it, of just paper signs, duct taped to label
handwritten
stuff.
like Sharpies on it.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. I don't know that I would go out in open water on top of the water on one of those things, having looked at how they were actually like putting this thing together, much less going like multiple miles beneath the surface of the ocean in this like metal death tube, like
And they say it's as big as a
insane.
minivan, but it did not look as big as a minivan.
It might have been as big as a minivan on the outside, but when you get into like foot thick steel, it is not as roomy as a minivan on the inside. It does not look like.
And they probably only planned for like a day trip because they're idiots, right? Like they plan to go 2.4 miles and spring back up. Oh, it'll just be a little day trip. We'll leave early in the morning. And they've been stuck in this thing. What, 5 of them have been stuck in this thing. And they're kind of stuck in there. They're kind of looking at it. And like, I can't believe when you look at the inside that like the toilet is literally just like a weird milk carton, like plastic milk carton or water bottle kind of deal with a handle on it.
Yeah.
Can you imagine the stench that is going on? Because that they're crying, they're shitting themselves, peeing themselves, and these are billionaires, people that have $250,000 to just throw away to go look at the Titanic, which just go watch the movie Titanic. I'm sure it's pretty accurate.
Unbelievable. Like, at least the people that are like shooting themselves into space, like, there's other stuff to look at, I guess, but like just looking at an old boat under the water, like I cannot personally fathom doing that for like $5, much less $250,000. Like, you could make the price $5. I'd look at that tube and still be like, no thanks, I'm good. I don't need to like check that off a bucket list or anything like that. It's absolutely insane that these people agreed to do this.
And I don't know what's been going on in the world of orcas, but every time I see a meme about orcas killing people or like, I don't have orcas started just going on a mass murdering spree and I'm just not aware of it. But
well, there was that news report about them like gathering in unusually large pods recently or something like that. So it's I don't know. Maybe they've had enough of our shit and they're ready to kick us off the ocean.
I love it. But I love all the orca stuff, like orcas coming in, they got their banging stuff, trying to, their sound of war drums before they go eat them. I think it's hilarious.
Crazy.
Okay, let's get back to Titans. So Warren Sharp puts out a tweet, and I see you just retweeted it because it actually came out while we were talking about run pass ratios, which is hilarious.
Yeah.
And he says, I spent. Oh, hold on. Where's it at? I spend a lot of time objectively researching every team each offseason, which he does. If you do not buy the Sharp Analytics book that comes out in mid-July during the dead period, it's definitely a must-buy. Looking for the good and bad as open-minded as possible. One thing I'll never be talked of is my belief that Todd Downing was a double agent trying to make life difficult for the Titans offense, which is sure as hell has felt like that all season. Like, you could just hear every Titans fan like in a church going, amen, amen, like hallelujah, amen.
Exactly.
Like to that. On first downs, Tennessee had the number 2 highest run rate, despite defenses stacking the box at the number 4 highest rate. Unsurprisingly, the runs ranked number 4 worst in efficiency. I want to kind of pause there for a second. There have been plenty of times where Derrick Henry has ran against stacked boxes and has been extremely efficient. So this, to me, is technically, while a bad strategy, obviously, is not indicative of that you shouldn't do this just because they have stacked boxes. Now, maybe you find out early in the offseason or early in the regular season that Derrick Henry is more Derrick Henry of 2022 than he is of 2020 or 2021 before he got injured. But that should not stop you from running the football. I mean, it should stop you, though, if it's not working. And nothing stopped them from running those loaded boxes, he goes on to say. Not even the fact that first down passes ranked number 3 in efficiency, which I have harped on, that Ryan Tannehill has been, and I've written about it, talked about it, tweeted about it, has been efficient early on. And then he throws up a graph, and it puts them at their number 3 worst rushing offense and number 3 best passing offense on first down. Their first down runs did almost nothing but force them into third downs, highest rate of being forced into third down after a first down run in the NFL, but they repeat it over and over. Now, he also puts out this meme that says Titans on every third down, and it's the, decrepit dead man who's looking at Jesus, and he says, "Stop giving me your toughest battles," and Jesus says, "Just pass the ball some on first down." Fantastic meme. Now, notice where he puts the blame, because this goes back to our opening segment where we're talking about the run-pass ratio. He puts it squarely on Todd Downing, the offensive coordinator. And I fully believe that Todd Downing was a major issue for inefficient plays and play calling, play design. And yes, there's personnel involved, but you're supposed to adapt to the personnel you have. We have seen the defense adapt to the personnel it has, right? We've seen the defense change. We've seen the defense try to put players in the best chances to succeed on defense. They've had a hard time doing that on offense under Todd Downing. So again, he puts the blame. A guy who does this for a living at a higher level than everybody else, who has seen Todd Downing and written about him when he was a Raiders offensive coordinator, agrees that first off, Todd Downing was the worst offensive coordinator in the NFL last year, and agrees at the blame that Todd Downing is the reason why the offense was as horrible as it was. Not that it was bad, but as horrible as it was.
Yeah, I mean, look, in the first down run rate stuff, I remember talking about it. God, I think I talked about it after the first game last season that they were running the ball at an insane rate on first downs and getting very little out of it, and then it just continued all season long, and he never ever variated from it, and it was absolutely maddening to watch it. And I don't know. I will say I'd put a lot of that blame on Downing, and maybe Vrabel's trust of his assistants or whatever was too much. But Vrabel, at some point, you're allowing it to happen, right? Like you have the authority to go to Todd.
He allowed
and say,
Dennis Daly to
hey,
happen. You could say as much as you wanted to be Keith Carter,
Yeah.
and I agree that Keith Carter should have you shouldn't need Vrabel to tell you that Dennis Daly sucks.
Right.
But he still allowed it to happen.
Yeah, and I do think Vrabel has to have some of the blame, because it is under his jurisdiction. It's under his power to go to Todd Downing and say, "Look, motherfucker, you cannot keep running the ball 80% of the time on first down and getting 1 or 2 yards per carry off of it. Like, you cannot keep doing that." It was malpractice all season. And to me, like, I will blame Downing first, but I think Vrabel does have to wear some of that. And we'll see. I'm hoping that maybe he's learned his lesson a bit from almost like a blind faith. And I think there's a fine line, right? With any manager of people, there's a fine line between like micromanaging and just having your hands totally off the wheel, right? Like, you have to find that middle ground of, all right, if something isn't going the way it's supposed to or the way that I want it to go, I can step in and correct without this guy feeling like now I have to run every decision by him, or now I have, no freedom to do what I need to do. Because ultimately, it's about hiring people that are good at their job and allowing them to do it, which I think is what Mike Vrabel wants to do with his staff. You could say maybe his hiring hasn't always been the best. I think his hiring has been above average as coaches go. I think he's had a lot of good assistants that he's hired. But at some point he's got to find that line of, if shit's been going off the rails for 6 weeks and Dennis Daly is awful and not getting any better in pass protection, you've got to be able to go to Keith Carter and say, look, Keith, I know you like Dennis as a run blocker. We can't have him killing our passing game anymore, and get him out of there. Like, give Radens a shot. Let's see what he can do. You've got to be able to go to Todd Downing and say, look, Todd, I know we want to get the ball to Henry and get him going early in games. That's a big part of our identity. But you can't keep running into stacked boxes every first down. Like, you just can't. So there's got to be a better management from Vrabel of his staff, to me. And I'm hoping that maybe that 2022 was a little bit of a lesson for him in that capacity, because look, I mean, he'd had almost nothing but success before this, right? So it is, maybe finally a kind of cold glass of water in his face that, all right, when things are going, I need to have a little bit more. You never want to be knee jerk, but you've got to have like a hand on the wheel, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's like, the good thing is that Tim Kelly was given the credit for what the tight ends did, which they did very well. He was given the credit for the red zone offense, or the scoring offense in the red zone, and he was given credit for early down passing, which, if you remember what I just said, what Warren Sharp said, the team was number 3, the third best team on first down passes, and they were highly efficient on first and second down passes. So that is a good thing for your Tennessee Titans heading into there. Okay, so PK, Paul Karski, your boss, your dad, he was on
neither of those things.
He was on Robbie and Rexrow this morning, on Wednesday morning, like he always is at 8 a.m. And I caught him, and he said a couple interesting things. First, he's chosen to steal my word of conundrum when describing quarterback questions. Clearly has stolen that from me, like he has came around and stole stuff and that I said about Tyjae Spears. But I find it interesting that he does not think the Titans will keep 3 QBs. He also says something interesting after that. But what do you think about that? Because I think it's almost a certainty the Titans are keeping 3 QBs.
I understand where he's coming from, in that, like, the Titans have not kept 3 quarterbacks in the Vrabel era. It's roughly 50. Like, he wrote an article about it at paulkowarski.com as well, where he broke down like the percentage of teams that carried 3 throughout the season last year, and it was like roughly 50-50. But it's a good breakdown if you want to go check that out. Between teams that carried 3 versus teams that carried 2. So it's not like unheard of around the league, but there are teams that have certain philosophies where that stands. My question would be, because it's important to remember that John Robinson was in control of the 53 during that time. Vrabel, now we would assume, is, if he's not in control of the 53 explicitly, he has more control over the 53. So I'll be interested to see whether that was a Vrabel thing, or maybe it was a Robinson thing, that he only wanted to have the 2 quarterbacks on the 53-man roster. I think when you add in the rule change where you can have a third emergency quarterback available in case 2 get injured in a game, and it does not count against your otherwise active 48 for teams on game day, I think that factors in a little bit, just a little bit. But ultimately, I think if Willis plays well enough in preseason, which preseason, obviously practices will matter from a team evaluation standpoint, but preseason I think matters from a league evaluation standpoint, because if the Titans feel like, hey, if we release Willis, he's not going to get through waivers, we're going to lose him, and we're going to have to go find another, scrap practice squad third quarterback to throw on our practice squad. I don't think they're going to want to do that. I don't think they're going to lose Willis for nothing. I mean, as bad as he was last year, he's still a guy that was that you invested a third round pick in just a year ago. I know, different regime, all that stuff, but if he plays well in the preseason, or at least shows like some progress in the preseason, I think you could maybe look at trading him if he has some value and Levis clearly shows that he's the guy. But otherwise, I think there's some value in keeping him and having a third quarterback around, having a backup for 2024 when, assuming Tannehill is not back, which I don't think he will be, Tannehill moves on, and then you've got Levis and Willis, and you've got a super cheap, hopefully pretty good backup quarterback situation at that point that could be workable for the next 2 years. So I think there's a lot of value in keeping him on the roster, even if he's not going to provide any value. Like, he's not going to play special teams, obviously, and stuff like that.
Right.
But, I mean, look, the bottom of this roster is complete trash. Like, I did that 53-man roster projection, and I'm keeping guys like, Jaden Peavy, and I'm keeping guys like, Tyreek Jones and these like, and Mike. I think I had Mike Brown on the 53. Like, you telling me we need to have Mike Brown on the 53-man roster instead of Malik Willis, who could eventually at least bring back a trade asset or something like that at some point in the future. I can't justify keeping some scrub guy that you could find on if someone got hurt, you could find Mike Brown on the street immediately and plug him in. Like, that is not an issue. So to me, Malik Willis would have to be really bad in preseason for the Titans not to try to keep three. I think they're going to. I think they're going to keep three.
Yeah, that's where I'm at. It's not the fact that I think that Malik is some great asset you have to keep or anything. It's the fact that the rules change and the bottom of this roster sucks. And they learned last year they desperately needed 3 quarterbacks. Because do you really want to feel forced to have to go back to Josh Dobbs again? Like, at some point, and then you look at what the San Francisco 49ers went through. It just makes too much sense. But this also brings up to kind of segues it to another point he made, which I think was everybody's initial thoughts on the outset after the draft and heading into rookie mini camp. But we kind of got lost along the way because the way that the media has limited access has forced them to kind of put up clips and put up videos of Malik versus Will Levis. Now, I am not turning this into, nor was PK, turning this into Will Levis versus Ryan Tannehill. But what he said essentially was that we need to stop comparing and making it be Will Levis and Malik Willis. It needs to be, how much can Will Levis gain ground on Ryan Tannehill? How much can he show us of what he's supposed to be? Because what he's supposed to be, he's supposed to be the 2024 Titans QB, starting quarterback. That is the plan. Now, plans can change, but that needs to be the standard that we hold him to. It's not that who's going to be quarterback 2, Will Levis or Malik Willis. It needs to be how much in practice and in preseason can Will Levis show everyone that he's more like Ryan Tannehill, less like Malik Willis. Because although that Malik Willis has shown improvement, he had a very low bar to clear in that regard. Like, he was horrendous and awful in last year in games. We have yet to see him in a game, right? So we don't really know how much he's improved, but we do know that in shirts and shorts versus shirts and shorts and scripted plays, that he looks better. He looks more comfortable. And that matters for Malik Willis, and that matters for this team's outlook on Malik Willis. But he had he had such a low bar to clear and improvement that everybody's just like, oh, well, Malik Willis he's back. We're back on the Malik Willis train. And that really doesn't mean anything at this point in time. But we need to start holding Will Levis away from Malik Willis and closer to Ryan Tannehill.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? Who wins, like between those two. Levis is the guy that they want to have this job long term. If they didn't feel that way, they would not have traded up to take him at 33, obviously. So Levis is the guy they want to win it. He's going to have to win it, right? Like he is going to, they aren't going to just give it to him for the sake of giving it to him. He's going to have to win it. But I think ultimately that is what you want to start seeing is him taking the steps, getting closer to Tannehill. And look, for what it's worth, I think Levis will take those steps because like we talked about guys doing the right thing away from the building and everything like that over the next 6 weeks and how important that'll be. I don't have a single doubt that Will Levis will be doing the right things away from the building, that he's going to be training, that he's going to be studying, that he's going to come back with a better mastery of the playbook, that he's going to have worked on the things that Tim Kelly and Charles London and Mike Vrabel have asked him to work on. And I would imagine that he will have improved some of those things. So I think we will start to see him separate himself as the second quarterback in training camp pretty early on. And then you would hope that, yeah, it becomes more of a Levis Tannehill thing than a Levis Willis thing as we get closer to the start of the season. And look, I don't think Levis is going to push for the starting job by week 1. I that's not what I'm saying. But I do
this
think
team's not gonna unless someone comes in and offers them like a crazy offer for Ryan Tannehill. They're keeping Ryan Tannehill. Like they're going for DeAndre Hopkins because whether you feel they're diluted or not, which they're probably like 50% diluted, they think that they can win the Super Bowl. Like,
I think they think they can win the division, and then I think they view it as if we win the division first, and then who knows what happens in the playoffs?
Yeah.
Like maybe Mahomes and Burrow both twist ankles, and
right.
whatever. Like you never know what happens. Well, not that like a twisted ankle ever stops Patrick Mahomes, anyways, because that happened last playoffs, and he still won the fucking Super Bowl. But anyways, I do think, I think they want to win, and I think Tannehill still will give them the best chance to win this season. But I think Levis will eventually be the quarterback number 2, and Willis will be the number 3. You would love for Willis to be good, though. Like I keep saying, like the ideal situation is that they're both good, and that they give the Titans like an asset moving forward to do something with. And one thing I want to hit on from the comments real quick, because I've seen this a few different times, is this the concept of like Levis in like splitting reps 3 ways. The question is like, how is Levis supposed to develop splitting reps 3 ways? He was going to split reps 3 ways anyways. Like whether Malik Willis is here or not, there's going to be a third quarterback on the practice squad or on the active roster. And it doesn't matter from a rep standpoint whether that guy's on the practice squad or the active roster. They're still going to distribute reps the same way. So that's the way all teams are going to do it. There's no team is going to only have 2 quarterbacks in training camp, much less,
some teams have more.
Yeah, some teams have 4. A lot of times there's 4. So I definitely think, at some point you're going to want Levis to become the true like number 2 and to get all the second team reps. I can understand that, and I think that'll happen pretty quickly. But there's always going to be a third quarterback in the mix. It was Logan Woodside and Malik Willis last year, and it every year there's going to be a third arm in camp.
Yeah, I'm with you. I saw that too. I think that will do it for us. I think we wrapped that up nice and neat right there. He's Mike Herndon. You can follow him on Twitter at Mike Herndon NFL. You follow me on Twitter at EffortsPod. My name is Zach Lyons. We're going to do a quick out. This has been Football Under the F Word, sponsored by Bluegrass Beverages in Hendersonville, Tennessee, and you have just been effed.